doing today? Man, first I want to talk about this Jimmy Giuffre record. We'll be going through the white sax players. We just wrapped that series up. I'm actually a day ahead of schedule with my videos right now. I got a couple days knocked out at a time. So this is Sunday. I'm going to publish it Monday. But this Jimmy Giuffre record, I've been listening to it for a little bit here. It's insane. It's subtle, gentle avant-gardism. For my tastes, I have a lot easier time seeing or digesting the avant-garde at this tempo and at this dynamic. There's little crescendos of volume, but for the most part we're kind of rolling gently along the bottom of the stream. Once in a while we hit a little rock and a bubble and a swirl. The bass playing is just great. I remember Paul Bly's on the piano and Steve Swallows on the bass, and he's beautiful. I'm really digging Swallows playing a lot. Giuffre ended up number 4 on my list, and that's higher than I would have anticipated when I started that project. But him and Mulligan both really became eye-openers in terms of just how broad their contribution was. There's a lot I learned, you know. I think people sometimes think that I'm on the mountain just handing out the 10 Commandments, but I learned a lot making these, you know. Just put all the records together, it just gives you a perspective and a cross-reference point that suddenly you're like, oh, wow, seeing all this together, well then, okay, you know. And now I'm just kind of sharing tidbits that I'm gleaning almost in live action, you know. In the week of putting something together, you know, I'll be getting a lot of little tidbits and epiphanies and like, oh yeah, connecting dots. And so there's definitely a lot of learning on my part, which for me is actually kind of exciting. Because sometimes I'm actually as much the student as the teacher, you know, and that's part of what learning is about. And there's a lot of teachers in schools that aren't experts on their subject. They just kind of learn it as they go and relate it. And I like to think of myself as a little bit more knowledgeable than that, but Hank Mobley, I found this really cool series of t-shirts online. There's a lot of the famous jazz clubs, and they didn't make them in my size, and the guy refused to make them in my size. You know, I offered to pay a little extra setup fee, wouldn't do it. Disappointed, because they'd have been a nice addition to my jazz t-shirt collection, which I've added about a dozen new things lately just to kind of spice it up. I'm going to still do the jerseys, of course, but you need to have a little spice of life variants, you know. I don't wear suits, I don't wear dress pants, I don't wear dress shoes. That ain't me. You know, it's never been my choice. I was raised in the school by I'm in the church by evangelicals. I stay away from dress clothes. I can't stand the way a dress shoe feels on my feet. I want a basketball shoe, I want an arch, I want support. But I got married in a hockey jersey. My wife's suggestion. We got this custom-made jersey. It's pretty cool, actually. But so anyway, this record's fantastic. I've enjoyed making that series. I've really learned a lot doing it, you know, and that's part of why I enjoy doing this so much, is because I am learning a lot as I'm going. I'm gonna cover a few things today. It's going to be kind of a loose-tied subject episode today. We're jumping into the black male sax, it's not male, but just the black sax players coming next. And I'm excited about that. I've learned quite a lot doing that as well. And just a lot of the cross-referencing even between obscurity who's now quite famous versus the white guys who were quite famous have now fell to obscurity. That's enlightening. That's telling us something, that the genuine flame and torch that burns in the black men, that comes from their need, not driven by ego, not driven by ability, not driven by talent. Talent and virtuosity are byproducts of desperation. It's I'm clinging on to this because it's the only place I can pray for my family's safety. I feel calm, release. And a few people are like, you talk about race a lot. And I'm like, it's one thing that kind of separates us channels. We're going to talk about some of that stuff. We're not going to talk about pressings and cartridges. We're going to talk about the emotional context and the historical context of this music, where it fits in time and space. And if we don't understand what it's telling us, a lot of my European brothers from around the world, they don't always get that American slice of history quite the same way as you do when you live here. So it's important for me to inform some of my gut feelings towards this music, knowing the black community today, their experience today, and transcending it on the past. I've talked with professors, I've talked with leading black writers and not archaeologists, but musicians, just a lot of elite, literate people in the black community. And when I share how I feel that this jazz music is biblical, and it's leading its people to the promised land and helping them escape bondage and giving them this joy and release, and it has "the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want" written throughout it in code, they find it enlightening and exciting and electrifying. And it's things that they've kind of grasped and understood, but to hear a white guy put it into those words and to codify it and be like, this shit is historically important because it represents a people finding its voice over an oppressor. And that will always have an audience, like I've said before. Whether you're Rage Against the Machine or Bob Marley or Moses coming out of Egypt, you let my people go. That shit will always have someone saying, yeah, I need some of that. And the historical context, which I've mentioned before, of the winners of the great wars write the history books. The creators of great art are the losers of those wars. You know, it's the oppression of the black experience in America that's made this incredible art form that, sure, it requires dexterity and some athleticism and breathing and just capability and talent, but what it requires more is the fuel of centuries of oppression and injustice, and the voices of generations speaking through that horn, being willing to tear down the walls of Jericho with a trumpet. See what I'm saying? It's that deep, it's that heavy. And when I share that with some of my black writers and professors that I've chatted with, it electrifies them. They're like, wow. And I've never had an African American have an issue with what I say about race. If anything, they can't believe a white guy sees it. That's what they'll say. And they'll often say, this is stuff that we've all talked about frequently, but not around white folks. You know? And it's, for the most part, it's something that I put things into words well. It's part of what the Jazz Shepherd does. He puts ideas into words in a thought-provoking kind of way. And I've shared cab rides, even when I used to drive Lyft and Uber between DJ gigs, with, you know, world-traveling, philosophizing, just incredible elite people mind-wise. And had some eye-opening conversations about the power of jazz just by having it playing in the car and a conversation starts. It's powerful stuff. So yeah, I gotta talk about what it makes me feel. And that's the whole essence of what this channel is about. You know, the talent, the ability is a byproduct. Again, the African mask. The guy didn't get great carving that mask because his ego wanted him to show everybody how great a carver he was. He wanted to be a great protector of his people. The jazz player doesn't become a virtuoso to illustrate how great a talent he is. He becomes a talent because he's so in need of this constant affirmation of this music that calms his soul, and he feels he's praying for his people, for the future, for his children's safety, and for his children's children's safety. And that's the concept and principle that prayer kind of wraps itself around in all faiths. See what I'm saying? This music is what gives me faith to get through the night. It's an intercession to the cosmos. And unlike a religion which is surrounded and earmarked by dogma and control, and often even has greed motivations within it, an art form like the Jedi, like jazz, It's such a direct link between my soul, my consciousness, my spirit, and the universe that I live in. And so it makes it so unfettered by the frailties of man. Religion, eventually your faith can weaken by those who emulate this religion and belief system, and you say something ain't adding up. But jazz, every day when I go into that temple, and white cats get it too, it's just they exercising different demons, you know. And I'll say this again, white guys are probably the more skilled players on average. White guys got better horns, better schools, better funding, better education. Like it's just their virtuosity is elite. Why have so many slipped into obscurity? Because the power of the blues, the power of expressing my soul in its hour of need is a riveting thing. And it's propelled all these rather obscure black artists who sold fractions of what these same white artists did into the conversation today as the face of this music. And I think it'd be really interesting to go back to 1955, look at the landscape, and then to see what and who is remembered today. It's been a real eye-opener making that series. So next thing I want to talk about real quick is I published a link yesterday on the YouTube group, on the little message page, to the Jazz Journal. That's for Patreon subscribers. People who pledge $5 a month minimum to my Patreon page have access to this Jazz Journal. I'm making it available to everyone, this first edition, so you can see what you're missing. It's a cool piece of music information. It's got a lot of reviews on records by me, a few longer pieces by me, and then it's also got some really great guest contributors, including my buddy Adam and my buddy Jean-Michel. And my buddy Adam's record, I'm going to show it to you a little bit later, so you guys can maybe take a chance and buy it. It's great modern jazz, hints of avant-garde. He's a great teacher of the bass, and he has students in his school, and they have this band. It's fantastic, and I have the vinyl. I'll show it to you. So check that link out. It's free because of that link. You can have access to it, watch the videos, see Ken McCullough's video, see Jean-Michel's video on Count Basie's piano playing. Just get a feel for what it's like and ask yourself, is this worth $5 a month to me? And I'm going to add more. My buddy Wolfgang's doing a guitar column starting next month. This thing's going to grow. Get in on the grassroots now. This is going to be the new way for us to communicate. It's going to have options for you guys to contribute as well. Polls, albums we should review, suggestions for YouTube content. It's going to be a great community. We're already building it, and I ask for you guys to check it out. And if you dig it, please subscribe. I want to move on from the journal, but do check the journal out. Next, I want to talk about. I'm going to start that series on the black sax player real quick here. But you guys want a throat grabber in between to break it up, or you want me to dive right into the sax players? Let me know. Like I said, this episode's going to come out on Monday, tomorrow. And so I'll watch what people say in the comments today, and then tomorrow I'll film either a throat grabber, or maybe we'll jump right into number 100 through 91. We'll see. Next thing I want to mention real quick is these rankings are loose. And I try to make the top 10 especially the ones that are definitely significant from almost everyone's opinion. Okay? And I try to measure to some degree my preferences and likes on some level. How much do they move me? That's going to be a factor. But when in the white ones, 30 through 50, I hadn't listened to any of those guys enough to really have an emotional connection to their playing. You know, the Giuffres, the Mulligans, the Getzes, those guys, of course, I have enough knowledge. But the more obscure artists, it's really hard to rank them because I don't really have connections. I don't know the music, or their bodies of work are small, so you don't really get an overarching. So they're kind of just loosely organized and listed. And I would say 30 through 50 was pretty much interchangeable. And I would say the next 10 were all fairly organized by those groups of 10. And then it was kind of even arbitrary from then how I would mix them up and list them. But what I want to get across here is this, to me, isn't ranking ability or how innovative they were. Those are factors. But think of this more as a beer awards competition. And you could do this about single malt scotch or about wine. Same kind of principle here. But I sold beer in a liquor store for 15 years. I know beer really well. From 95 to about 2011, 2012, that's what I did. I was a beer department manager while I DJ'd and did live music. But think of these as beer contests. And jazz, like beer, has many different styles, many different tastes. And some tastes we have to recognize are going to be very specific and limited in audience. The barley wine department, 5 to 10% of beer drinkers are going to be drinking barley wines. Imperial stouts takes a pretty devout beer drinker with an acquired palate that's grown into the hops and the complexities and bitterness, and they want that vinous, almost molasses, viscous body. Triple IPAs, that's a beer that's extreme. And when you review beer, you know that this is great, but it's also very limited in who it's going to appeal to. And so what I'm trying to do with this list is I'm trying to take beers from different categories that aren't always cross-referenceable and have the ultimate judge be how drinkable is this for most people. I think that's a big part of how I make these lists. And it's going to mean some of the avant-garde guys slip down the list some. Not because I don't think they're great or talented or innovative, but I think that barley wine is real limited in who's going to love it. And there's enough people out there praising free and avant-garde jazz, trying to make new jazz people think like, you have to have this. If you don't have this, what are you doing? And it's like, that'd be me at a beer competition saying, everybody has to drink barley wine today. And so what we're doing is we're having an overarching kind of what's the most drinkable from all these different styles. And a lot of these other beers are great, but limited in their scope. I really want to these are kind of the 5 criteria. Number 1 is body, finish. How balanced are they? In a beer, you want your grain, your body, to match your finish, your hops. And the balance between is often what makes it great or not good. And with jazz players, to me, the body is the blues, the groove, the head, the riff. How does a player play in the ensemble? How bluesy and gutsy is this swing? And then the finish, the hops, is his impressions, his virtuosity, his emoting. When he plays his solos, what afterthoughts does it leave you with? And for me, the best balance is when a guy swings hard and then grooves in solos and improvises from his soul within the blues. You know, that's the accessibility of it. Number 2 is the influence. You know, if you were really great at what you did you change the industry? Did you innovate? Did you bring a new expression to the form? 3, the target audience, which I mentioned kind of, is how limited is the market for this product? I need to factor that in because I'm trying to appeal to a broad spectrum of music listener. You don't have to be a jazz fan to hear the Jazz Shepherd say you should have this record. Because if I say you should have this record, I want anybody to be able to take it home and be like, oh wow, this is really good. Anybody. And again, drinkable and enjoyable. How easy is it for everybody in the room to digest it? If you get a really great Pilsner, you know, a nice crisp Pilsner with a nice golden grain, with a nice heft to it, but it's not in any way sugary. It's grainy, and then you get that nice citrus hop finish back end with some dry, clean balance. That's wonderful. And for me, great jazz is like a perfect wine. And wine's about balance too between body and aftertaste. Some people don't want to be super oaky or super dry. And if it's going to be super dry and super oaky, the body needs to complement that somehow. And so balance is an important thing. And then obviously the last thing is kind of just legacy. You know, how many of these products you made did everybody else come along and kind of make a version of that? To me, the great players, you end up having people saying next generation, oh, you play like so-and-so. You know, and so there's some players on this list that I elevate because their careers might not have been super dynamic, but they influenced a generation of kids. And I'm going to save that for the video, but there's guys that raise and rank for different reasons, you know. And then it's just kind of a loose rundown of how I want people to see these rankings. So there's no reason to be all upset and be like, oh, why is this guy so low? Why is this guy so high? And it's just my kind of interpretation of how enjoyable will this be to most people. And within even a lot of artists, there's a range. Coltrane, you know, there's a lot of stuff with Coltrane that I wouldn't recommend to most beginners. You know, it just wouldn't be a sensible thing to do. Moving on. My friend Adam reviewed the great bass player Sam Jones in episode 1 of the Jazz Journal. It's on like page 13, 14, and it's a great review. He knows his stuff, and like I said, he's a teacher, and he and some of his students have a band up in St. Paul. It's called the Percheron, and they play around. They got colored vinyl, lots of different colors. This record is available on Discogs, and Adam's a great bass player. I've watched him play just in his living room, and it's exciting. And he's played with a lot of the greats, learned from a lot of the greats. Lived in New York for years, in the 80s and 90s. He's teaching the new young generation of kids, and I admire him for that. And he works in this record store called Barely Brothers in St. Paul. And I go in there, we might spend 90 minutes talking, and it might feel like 5. You know, we chant down Babylon, as Marley used to say. This is a great record. It's, for lack of a better place to put it, to me it fits actually in the Wayne Shorter era Miles Davis sound. I got the guys to sign it. They're all young kids at this point except for Adam, Levi, Corey, and Noah. A vibraphone, cornet, drums, and Adam on the bass. But it feels to me in that vein. If I recall, the vibe player was very much a Bobby Hutcherson guy, Levi. There's some blues right there. It's a fine session. The Percheron, I think it's just called self-titled The Percheron. It is available on Discogs. I don't think it's on Amazon, but I will try to put a link down below so you guys can grab it if you want some great local scene, organic jazz that you're not going to hear and nobody else will have. It's worth having. It's good stuff. And Adam's a great guy. I really enjoy our conversations without any question of a doubt. An interesting tidbit I want to throw in here is I've talked quite a bit about the Argo label. And I just reviewed Argo 601 in the Jazz Journal, the first record on the Argo label, and I did all the first label albums. It's pretty cool. But I stumbled on this and I had to grab it. And this is the first Argo, first pressing of the Al Hibbler record. And it's noteworthy because it's a heavy, heavy grain vinyl. And part of what really intrigued me about it when I saw it, and I wasn't looking for this, but I'm like, what is this? Marteri, how do you say that? And why is Argo giving their records to Marteri? But this looks so old. I had to figure it out. And turns out that Marteri is the first syllable of Phil or Leonard Chess's kids. One of them. Oh, there's both their kids actually. Marshall and Terry, I think it is. And he named his new jazz label Marteri. And Argo 601 actually came out as Marteri. And maybe the next couple did as well, I'm not sure. But it didn't last long before they switched the name to Argo and reissued it with the Argo name. So this is actually a very old first pressing of the very first Argo 12-inch LP out of Chicago on the Marteri label 601 High Fidelity Al Hibbler. And I think that's just a kind of interesting piece. You know, I'm not going to show you a lot of records I found. I'm not buying a lot of records right now. I don't got the money. But this to me is a fascinating little piece of history. And I didn't know about Marteri. I'm guessing my friend Bill, Scott Baldwin knew about Marteri records. But kind of fun. I also want to show you real quick my buddy Jamal Ramirez. You'll see him on some of the Facebook groups, Jazz Vinyl Lovers, JVC, the Jazz Vinyl Club, which is my group. He's also a music teacher and is a drummer. He's fantastic. He's out of the Bay Area. He sent me this record last year, and I really enjoyed it. And this record to me is also kind of in that somewhere between Weather Report and Second Quintet Miles. It's in that same kind of vein. Definitely got some modern production there. The kick drum sounds great. Warren Wolf, Howard Wiley, Mike Olmos, Matthew Clark, Johnny Shiflett, and Jamal Ramirez. It's a great record. I don't really review modern jazz much, and I don't really know a lot of modern stuff, but these are both friends of mine. I know Adam in real life, and Jamal I just know through online, but I just wanted to kind of say thank you again for sending me that vinyl, guys. I've had them both for a couple of years, and they deserve a little recognition and shout out, especially since Adam's helping in the Jazz Journal. Check out his record. You know, he's a deep cat. You know, his bass playing will kill you. Lastly, in this little mini episode, remember to let me know if you guys want throw grabbers real quick, or if we should just move on to the sax players again. But I want to talk about Charlie Shavers real quick. And I've talked about Shavers in the trumpet series, and I think he's made a throw grabbers once or twice. But this is intimate Bethlehem 10-inch with Shavers. And I want you to hear this guy's tone. He's one of those guys that can play with strings and tell you a story. There's, to me, a lot of Armstrong, some Eldridge, but he's actually a contemporary of Roy and goes back to the swing era. Charlie is a little ball of energy. There's a positiveness, a positivity, a brightness, and Armstrong in his playing. This is his other 10-inch on Bethlehem, number 1007. And I think this one has Al Jasbo Collins narrating in between songs at times. And Jasbo's always a fun hipster cat. This is a Midnight at Eddie Condon's on the Emersy label. Blue back, old pressing, with Charlie Shavers, Wild Bill Davison, Joe Sullivan, Dave Tuff, George Wetling, some great players. Just love the feel and look of that old vintage blue ink, the red sticker. It's all so beautiful, man. Shavers is not someone you should pass over. You know, I think everybody should go out and buy themselves a Charlie Shaver record. This is Jazz at the Metropole on Bethlehem, where he's one of the leading soloists on that. Charlie Shavers and Strings. If I recall, this is a reissue of that other one. Another Bethlehem. The complete Charlie Shavers with Maxine Sullivan. Great stuff. And this one's on MGM. But see that guy there? See that character? See that coattail pulling, untying your dress apron? This guy's a character. You know? And to me, he just spills with that kind of life. And he expresses his personality so joyously. And to me, that's the essence of jazz. If I'm not getting to know you by listening to your music, what am I doing? You know? It's such a great insight into a human being and how they handle the world they live in. And some guys, the cup's half full. Some guys, the cup's half empty. So that's Charlie Shavers. I've talked about him before. I know I have. But I just think he needs as much light shine on him as possible. He's just really one of those fun players that really gets overlooked a lot. Again, buy his stuff. Check it out. I'll put a link to it. Check out the Patreon page. Check out the Jazz Journal. There's a link on the YouTube homepage right now where we have messages and stuff. Thank you all for your support. And the community is wonderful. Are you hearing this? It's... Oh, Charlie. This is a guy no one listens to. You know? This is a guy who no one listens to. And he wasn't gifted with recording sessions at the right labels at the right time. You know, and he kind of slips through the cracks and ends up in rather obscurity. And because of some of the labels he ends up on, you know, he ends up doing some pretty saccharine production around him. But he's still kicking a donkey's tail every time he puts that trumpet to his lips. And to me, in some ways, that's the most defining characteristic of a great player. It doesn't matter where you drop me, I'm going to throw down buckets of fire. You know, that's... Not everybody can do that. A lot of guys are really reduced by their setting. The great players, it doesn't matter. You put me in the corniest setting, I'm still going to watch out. It's almost an act of defiance. Oh, really? You think I'm going to shtick for that? Nah, I ain't shucking and jiving. Watch this. And they blow up your set. See what I'm saying? They blow up your TV. They just turn it out. And it's an important aspect of the music's connection with... You think I'm doing what you're telling me to do, but watch me not do what you're telling me to do. I got a whole lot of strength inside of me, and you ain't gonna put a little bow tie on me. Go ahead, straighten it out. Watch me blow it off. You know? I love that aspect of the music. It's powerful. So let me know. You want a throat grabber tomorrow? Or you want to dive into the sax players? We'll go from here. Y'all be safe. Have a great day. A little interlude episode, which is fun sometimes. You have a great day. Peace.